Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Because Money podcast. I am joined with Chris Enns, who is our new co-host, as well as Sandy Martin. I am in the producer's chair for Jackson Middleton this year, so let me turn it over to Chris to introduce himself.
Hey guys, I am Chris and I'm filling the wonderful shoes of co-host past in Because Money. I'm thrilled to be here and ready to get started.
Sandy?
Oh golly, it's me, still in black and white. So Jackson is still going to come in. He's still going to come to the show. Actually, we've lined up our next episode that we're recording today, which isn't going to be released until 2 weeks from now, but he's going to be with us. So we'll still see Jackson, which is fantastic, but we also have the opportunity to see John and talk to him and have Chris, who is, you are not going to believe the kinds of things that Chris has planned for us, even in this episode. So now that we know who we all are, Chris, what did you do this summer?
I know that you're all on bated breath wondering where I've been. You know, what have I been doing since you last saw me? Summer's been great. I'm glad it is fall. I spent the summer. I'm split my life between the finance world and the world of opera singing. And so I spent my summer on the East Coast singing an opera about Alexander Graham Bell, and then doing a whole bunch of camping and kind of camped my way back with my partner, and really enjoyed summer and the outdoors, and it was a fantastic summer. And I know so much about Alexander Graham Bell now. So that's going to really come into play in this podcast. You'll see. Just Bell facts all over the place.
John, do you have any Bell facts?
Bell facts. Oh, I could probably come up with a few. I mean, I've got a 4-year-old who asks why nonstop, so we're always on Wikipedia looking up all kinds of things. As for my summer, I mean, you guys haven't seen me for quite a while on the Because Money podcast, but pretty busy time. In particular, I was building a online course to help people learn how to invest. That is down in my lower third here, where you can see the address course.valuesimple.ca. So sign up. And that's basically just expanding on the book that I wrote several years ago into having more hands-on, more multimedia, so that you can see my face in videos, so that you can hear my voice on voiceovers and walkthroughs, in addition to all the text and the spreadsheets and everything. And Sandy, how was your summer?
It was actually very good. We went swimming every day. I started every newsletter that I wrote to clients like, hey, we were swimming again. So to me and we bought a canoe, which has enormous holes in it, but it was really cheap and we can fix it this winter. So summer 2016, I don't think it'll be beat until summer 2017 rolls around, and then it'll be pretty cool. One of the things I did was hide at a conference this summer. Sometimes I don't do people very well, which I think is not a surprise to anybody. But so I got to talk to Chris a lot. He wasn't there, but I sat in a corner and, here's the full thing.
You're in the moment right there. That's exactly what it looked like.
I had a beautiful polka dot dress on, not this one. It was a different one. Yeah. It made me feel good about myself, but it was actually fairly excruciating. There were some good things about it, but there was this one part where the head of the wealth management division of a bank that shall be unnamed, lest it burn our screens. No. He gave one of the talks, and he was he was talking about the holy trinity of wealth management. And the reason he was talking was because he wanted to assure everybody in the room that robo-advisors weren't going to take their jobs. No client of theirs would ever need a robo-advisor because they were way better. And I think there are some, points that he made that were okay. But most of the time he said the holy trinity of financial planning is taxes, investments, and estates. And I thought, well, that leaves 3/4 of my clients out in the cold. Everybody pays taxes, right? You want to pay the least amount possible. Fine. You want to make sure your kids get what you want them to get and you don't pay too much taxes. But after a certain point, so then Chris, when we were talking about this episode, Chris said, okay, why don't you tell them what you said, meaning me, about money? And I was like, no, this is what Chris said. So here is a gem of wisdom that Chris laid on me while I'm sitting there behind my phone in my polka dot dress, not talking to anybody. He's like, it's funny. It's like they don't actually want any more clients. But wait, they do. But they just think that the dollars are their clients and not the people. And I was like, that really blew, because I think it's actually true. One of the things that this guy finished with was any really good advisor actually wants fewer people, fewer richer clients. because it's actually, and what's best for the dollars is the advice that we give in financial planning. So I think there was a lot of discussions between me and Chris and me and John and me and Jackson and all three of us, and there was 4 in there, I can't count. And I think that was the genesis of what we wanted to talk about more in this season of Because Money. Right, Chris?
It's true. Sandy and I met just about a year ago.
Happy anniversary.
Maybe a little bit less than a year ago, but it's still getting close enough. Happy anniversary. And we've done, one of the things that we've talked a lot about is the conversation that we have in personal finance and kind of the bigger conversation that financial institutions run and that we have as bloggers and just kind of this industry has about finance and how it's kind of messed up. And it was that story when Sandy talked about that presentation about these are the things that people care about. And like, you don't have to be a financial planner in finance to realize that that's not true. Like, that's not how people think about money. They don't think about estates and taxes and in that kind of singular way. People think about, how they're going to, afford to have kids and buy a house and build a life, and how they're going to afford to travel and do this. And are they going to be okay when they get older? And can you handle health? Like, these are the things that people think about, real people. Money, on the other hand, only cares if it's, growing and protected from the government and all these things. So it's amazing when you start looking at the conversation in that kind of lens that it all starts to make more sense. The financial institutions, and yet again, and this has been said on this podcast so many times, it's not about demonizing the people that work at these institutions. There's amazing people that work in the finance industry, but the institutions themselves are kind of messed up. And I think that conversation that they try to run is really around that idea that the money is the client, and we need to serve the money and grow the money. And Sandy and I and John and Jackson too are just interested in a different side of it. This idea that people should be first when it comes to money. First, how are you doing? Not how is your money doing? And that comes from, not only just kind of a philosophical belief, but it really comes from the way that Sandy and I especially have set up our lives. Sandy's talked before about her life and how she used to be at the bank. But I thought one of the interesting things that we want to talk about a little bit in the first episode is why person-based finance is such an important thing in our lives specifically. And so I wanted to kind of kick it back to Sandy a little bit to talk a little bit about how you left your glorious and fancy world of the bank and, pension plans and retirement savings and security for something completely different.
Oh, it was very glamorous, let me tell you, at the bank.
So glamorous. They had carpet everywhere.
It's funny. Carpet everywhere. I just mirrored that back to you as like, that was a funny joke. Only just got it after I said it out loud. I don't want to put myself up on this like, oh, I've created the perfect life, because there's stress. There's a fair amount of stress in our lives.
Yeah, totally.
But it was really important to my husband and I that when we had kids, not just kids, but I kind of like him too, so I like spending time with him. I never wanted a life where it was like, okay, I'm going to work from 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 5:30 plus some weekends when it's Run for the Cure or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a different story. And then squish my life into evenings and weekends. But of course, obviously the trade-off is we have less money than would be nice to have. And I can't say that, we've had it actually documented on this show in a very stressful period of time. We had a big insurance thing happen and we had to put a lot of money in our house, and we're still paying for some of that money, but we don't have wet walls. So we consciously made a trade-off to be less well off. We're really affluent, We have a home and we can afford to feed our kids, and they have clothes that sometimes they like and food that almost all of us like, and we're really well off in a lot of ways, and we're happy with that. And that's why we I feel like I kind of went off on a tangent a little bit, but that's the kind of life that I want, and I'm willing to sacrifice a lot of stuff to have time to pick up the kids from school together or not together, or go on a drive if we feel like it or whatever, right?
But that's the part of finance that gets me really excited. That idea that there's this life that I'd love to have. I'd love to build a life around, my family and my home, and this spending time and this flexibility, and then using the same tools that the finance industry talks about. And these tools are good. They're useful tools, but using them for that instead of just using them to maximize earning potential and decrease fees. And, instead of just kind of fitting into these categories, you saying, this is the life that I want to build. How can I apply personal finance tools to that? Mm-hmm. It just,
or even when it's not quite so positive, because sometimes it's which of these two terrible options fits better for me, because it's not always the wonderful life you want to build. But even then, when you've got relatively poor options presented to you, you still have to decide column A, column B, a little bit of both. How's that going to work? And personal finance touches in a lot of those.
100%, because money touches almost every area of your life, whether you're a financial person or whether you hate money, it still gets in there. So it's a deciding factor all over the place, and it's kind of knowledge around it and kind of a deeper discussion in it around it can help make those decisions just a little bit more informed.
So Chris, what's yours? What's your person first?
See, I've never really had a real job in my life. I worked one summer at a corporation and their call center, and that's the only actual kind of paychecks that I've ever gotten from a company. Because I grew up on a farm and worked a lot on the farm growing up, and then when I was in school, and then I became an opera singer because apparently that's a job, and have somehow been scratching out a living at that for the last 5 or 6 years, and now I'm diversifying in a couple of different areas. But it's growing up on a farm, you kind of around these people that I saw life in a way that was, there's tons of work, there's tons of things that you had to do, but you were in charge. You got to be in control of your decisions, and you got to take responsibility for your failures, which I also like. I like that it's not anybody else's fault. And I like, even though, like you said, it's like, you can say, oh, it's great being self-employed, you have all this flexibility, but you don't all the time, because like Sandy said, it's not like I have a ton of money, a lot of financial freedom, but my story is not like, I haven't been great with numbers throughout my life. I kind of, I made all the mistakes. And then eventually, when I'd made enough of the mistakes, I decided that learning a few things about money would be great. And so I've done the kind of be self-employed with no money knowledge, personal finance tools, and self-employed after with very little actual money change. And so that's one of the reasons why I get so jazzed up about this, because I know how big of a difference those tools and kind of using those tools on a really basic behavioral level can really make in how much more free you feel, how much more empowered you feel, and how much more, like John was saying, those decisions when they come up, whether they're positive or negative, you just feel more capable of making them instead of just like pushing them away. When those decisions get to come up and be like, I don't want to deal with this, and you just kind of push it away until you get the red colored letter from CRA or pink. I don't know. It's not great. Colors aren't great. Not really super.
Do you know what's really funny though? Not like, well, really funny, maybe not. Something that I really strongly remember talking to you about around growing up on the farm is what you were talking about when you were saying, like, even though you're not, I don't know how to encapsulate it the way that you did, but that on the farm you were really intimately connected with most of the people in your community, and that. Yeah. And that one of the things that you were investing in, or people in the community, was each other and that community, so that when the next thing came up that you needed to rely on them for, or they needed to rely on you for, the history was there that was going to happen. And that really, I think that was during that conversation when we were planning this season. It was just thinking about how can we talk about money in a way that that doesn't say, oh, get rid of the rules, or personal finance is personal and whatever I do is fine because I can explain it away. But how can we expand the conversation to include things that are more than just what's your credit score and, you know, those types of things that I think we'll end up talking about shortly. But
completely. You actually used the word total capacity at some point.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's such an interesting word. The idea that instead of just looking at, you know, how much money do I have versus how much debt and where am I investing that, to just look at a larger idea of the assets in your life. Because the truth is, and you've talked about this too, about moving to a smaller community, the idea that some of the times people don't just make decisions based on cost financial kind of choices. It's based on all these other things and these huge assets, and one of them being community and one of them being people around you. And on the farm, that's always huge. I was reminded that I get down in the summer as much as I can. And this last year, we had a kind of a tragic death in our community, and seeing the community rise to that. There's this, you know, this man who had helped people out for his life. And when he passed during harvest, when it's really busy, neighbors dropped what they were doing and they helped, and they couldn't. It's been such a bad season with time. Nobody has the time. Nobody has but it's not about that. It's about we do things together. And that's an insane asset. That's a huge thing that you just doesn't get put on your financial balance sheet, right?
Totally. I get a little bit verklempt. That kind of stuff. Okay, so in the interest of building this little community, you came up with a little game. Bad segue.
Bad segue. Okay, so I like games. I like games in all senses. And so since we are just getting to know each other as new co-hosts, you know, it's a new relationship, I thought we'd play a little bit of a game that is badly dubbed the newly hosted game, so that we can learn a little bit about each other. I think that we know each other, you know, pretty well, but I'm sure there's some things that we don't know. And so we're going to put it to the test in the style of the Newlywed Game. I put together a few questions. And so we're going to take some turns. On your turn, markers, on your turn, John will throw up a question, which is on the thing right now. For example, this will be the first question, and this will be for Sandy. For
Sandy. So, Sandy, your co-host, Chris, what is your co-host's favorite finance read?
Okay, so you have to try to guess what my favorite finance read is, and then we'll see if our answers match.
All right. Does this mean I have to have legible handwriting?
I just was writing and I was like, oh, that's not great. You can read.
I think we can trust you that you'll read out what you actually wrote.
Yeah.
No! That's not how it works.
Okay. What's your guess?
Value is simple. Because...
Good answer.
Well, but listen, am I allowed to tell a little story, or we don't?
Of course you can tell.
No, yes, please, stories.
The reason I met Chris is because somebody contacted me to say, hey, maybe we could work together. And it turns out we found somebody much better for them to work for. Work with, totally true. But at the very end of the call, they're like, do you know how we found you? And I said, no, I have no idea. And they said, you were mentioned in the thank you notes of Value of Simple, which my friend Chris gave me. And I already knew Value of Simple, so I kind of skipped over that because I thought, I got to talk to John. And I told him the story, and then I connected with Chris, and the rest is history.
It's true. Value of Simple, my brother gave me that book for Christmas last year. Would that have been last year? No, the year before. And I read it in one sitting, and I do really love Value of Simple. I was thinking more in the terms of blogs, and so I wrote, and it's like such a classic big, but it was like my first big money blog that I read, which is Mr. Money Mustache.
Oh, I love him.
And I still, even though some of it is really fun and extreme, I love it especially when he writes about his kids. All those posts about his kids and about teaching his kids to like deal with money are just some of my favorite things. But you're 100% right too.
Yeah, well, you can't say not. I mean, that's just insulting to John.
Well, it's also
not while I'm here on the call.
I don't have to pretend at all. Okay, this is a question for me.
Chris, this is your question. About Sandy. So what finance topic does your co-host most like to nerd out about?
All of them. Pick one. don't even have an answer for that.
Oh, man. There's no spell check on my giant cards. That's a bit of a problem. Okay. I decided to go topical. I know there's a little bit of stutter there. And went with robo-advisors.
Oh, I love to nerd out about robo-advisors.
I really love to nerd out about robo-advisors. What did you go with?
You made me think sequence of return risk.
You're such a nerd. That's an amazing thing to write. Oh, I would have never guessed that. Okay. That's awesome. Okay, cue it up.
Next. So what are we, 0 for 2?
Oh, yeah. We're going to
So fun. So, Sandy, this one is for you about Chris. What finance tool does your co-host use most often?
I think I know that one.
I think you can probably get this one.
Get a point. Alrighty.
Okay. What did you say?
Wait, you can't see that.
You need a budget.
Point, Sandy. The answer was YNAB.
That was an easy one.
For those of you that don't know, it's You Need a Budget. It's my favorite little budgeting software. It's super fun.
Super fun.
All right.
That's all. Those are all the questions.
No, question 4. But, to fill the gap a little bit. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
We are pros.
Next question. So, Chris, this is about Sandy. How many pairs of shoes does your co-host own?
Yeah, so some of these questions aren't about money, I guess.
Wear regularly or own?
I think the question is own total. Okay, if you're counting your fingers. If you count on your fingers, I'm just going to count. I'm not above cheating. Yikes. Okay. I think I'm high.
I'm wrong.
I think I'm high. Okay. I felt like you wrote down 2. I'm going to go with 11.
Oh, you are high. 7. I almost forgot my winter boots.
Shoot. I'm glad that you included the boots.
Mm-hmm. I also still own the shoes that I wore for my wedding, which is weird, but...
I thought you would have multiple pairs of flip-flops or something like that.
One $5 pair.
I just thought maybe different colors or something. I don't know. Anyways, okay. Question 5.
Okay. Next question, Sandy. What is your co-host's biggest financial pet peeve?
Oh, Lordy. Pet peeve about other people? Am I allowed to ask clarifying questions? That's the thing I do most all the time.
Sure. Yeah, not about me. About like an outer pet peeve.
About other people. I'm just going to go topical. I'm just going to say a thing that is not a thing, really. Fully expecting this to be wrong. Oh, this is not a good answer. I apologize in advance.
What did you go for?
Credit cards.
Oh, that's not a pet peeve.
No, I know. It's terrible. I'm sorry.
I went with ridiculous financial jargon.
Oh, that's better. That's much more in line with who you really are.
Well, that's what we're trying to put out there.
I stink. Sorry.
For better, for worse. It's okay. You've got 1 point. Like this is my only chance to tie.
All right.
Okay, last question.
Here it is, the last question. What is your co-host's most important non-financial asset?
Okay. I think I'm going to get this one.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Alrighty. I'm not sure if this makes me sound like I'm... Okay, you answer, then I'll say that.
Okay, I went with family, and in brackets, the guy who brings you coffee.
I
got it!
I thought, should I talk about a person as though they're an asset? That sounds like he's chattel, which he is not.
But that was in the general spirit of total capacity, right?
Yeah. He's like 70% of my total capacity.
It's true. Like, people are always talking about the latte factor, and you've cut down on yours by having a financial asset like Seth, who brings you coffee.
Oh, that's like 1% of his worth.
That's one. Oh, man.
He's got a whole load of other skills. All right.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Oh, to the unnamed segment.
Oh, to the unnamed segment. Well, we should say we've been talking a little bit about it, but really, our season this year, we've really kind of tried to plan it with this idea of what we've been talking about with person-based finance and this idea of total capacity and this idea of kind of stretching some things out. And so we've got lots of cool guests planned and some really fun ways to look at some topics that lots of people are talking about, right? Is that fair to say, Sandy? I think they're fun.
Totally fair.
But so yeah, we're kind of in that vein. And now to the unnamed segment that we will name at some point.
Yes, so the whole point of the unnamed segment is that we are not the only thing out there. It's not like you're getting all of your financial news and understanding and media from the Because Money podcast. So in acknowledgement of the fact that there are people other than us, here are some things that we've been reading and looking at and are interested in sharing. So Chris, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, I'm going to share something that I just found this afternoon and that I'm super pumped about, which is a new podcast. I don't know how new it is. It's new to me, called Bad with Money. And I'm a big fan of, as we've been talking about the whole time, and I've been spouting my mouth about just different kinds of conversations about money. And it's a Californian who is just talking about, she's bad with money, but she's doing really interesting interviews with friends and family. And the first episode was it was all about a friend of hers who was on disability and how that works in the States. And I know that our audience is Canadian, but it's still really, really interesting and talks about family dynamics and how we teach each other about money. It's really, really cool. So check it out.
I think I will. No. So I read a lot of the blogs of the robo-advisors. That's a callback. And Simple has a really good one. Their Grow blog is really, really good. Really? And the one today they have the Money Diary series, and today was a girl named Iris Brilliant. And she has a trust fund. She's independently wealthy, and she was from a very young age. She said, and so she's talking about something that she started, which is called the resource generation. So that's interesting. It's other people who have trust funds who are quite wealthy, and how can they give their money away? She helps them connect to charities. And anyway, that was an interesting part. That's very interesting. But the part that was really interesting was a paragraph in the middle about, she said, I could lose my trust fund tomorrow and I would still have my family, still have my friends, I still have a good education, I don't have any debt. I mean, it's a list of things that we don't necessarily all share. Yeah. But it was a list of things that were like, yeah, tomorrow I could lose all my money and I think I'd still be all right. And I was struck by that. And I wasn't even thinking about it in the context of what we're talking about today, but of course I was struck by it. So that was a good one. Often, actually, a lot of the Grow ones are, for some reason, which kind of makes me feel weird to say that because it's a company blog, but still, it was good.
Hey, that's a really cool sentiment. That's just a really cool, like, if you're talking about total health and financial capacity and total capacity and all that stuff, like that's kind of, isn't that the goal? Like to get to exactly that place, like build a life where you're like, if I would lose all my money.
Yep. Yeah, I thought that was good. Okay. Yeah. John, close us out. What did you read?
Okay, well, I actually don't have anything that comes to the top of my mind of what I've been reading this week in particular, but one I've been reading for a long time is Michael James on Money, and he's a little bit of a numbers guy. He likes to also talk about the intersection with behavior. And the thing that really gets me is he's been out there just doing his thing forever, one of the earliest Canadian personal finance bloggers, and he never makes the best Canadian finance blogs to read lists that are out there, and I think that's really unfortunate. So you should really check out his blog, Michael James on Money. He's got a ton of stuff in the archive that's really good to read on sort of intelligent, low-cost investing.
Awesome. Awesome.
Good.
Okay, so I think that's going to be it for our introduction to Season 3. There are going to be more episodes coming up. We're aiming for a bi-weekly, that is every other week, not twice a week, release schedule here at Because Money. And so thanks for watching today, and we will be back with our next episode soon.
Can I say one extra thing?
Oh, yes, you can always say one extra.
I am so sorry. I thought I wanted to tell people that we might actually be on iTunes soon, like be a real podcast. So, yes, including our back episodes.
Yeah, we forgot to mention Mohammed and his involvement in the podcast here.
So more to come on that.
More to come on that.
More to come. All right. You can check it out on the BecauseMoney.ca website where you can see the other people who are involved who aren't on the webcam because there is some more work going on that makes this all happen. So thanks again for watching. Goodbye.